Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining of Two Mindsets. I am D Hill, and as always, I have with me my co-host, Dr. Pam Hooks. How's it going today, Dr. P?
Well, I'm gonna tell you, it's going. I'm just gonna say I've been up since about 5:30 this morning, so it's going, and it's
It's
gonna
going.
continue to go. It's
You,
going,
you want to
going.
tell us briefly why you're saying it's just going and why is it
Just
not great? It's
it's
beautiful
just
weather over here.
going. It's beautiful weather. Well, I started my day off with my prayer team, and then I had to go see about my car. But
Mhm.
it's just been a trying day. But we
I
gonna make the
got you.
best of it. We see you see the smile. It's gonna make the best of it. I promise you,
Awesome.
It's gonna make the best of
We're
it.
going to try to keep that smile going.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
So, as we move to our guests, in our family, I think you would agree, education is very important. And
Yes.
this gentleman that we're talking to today, he holds a Doctor of Education degree specializing in educational leadership and administration. He is a member of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. I've known him for many years, and he most recently has served as an instructional coach. And we'll get into what that means exactly. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. or Dr. Ronald Edwards. Let's give him a
Welcome,
hand.
Dr. Edwards. Welcome,
How
welcome.
you
Thank you
doing
so
today,
much.
sir?
I appreciate you all this morning.
Excellent. It's good to see you.
Good to see you
Um,
too.
you were supposed to be on the Michael Jackson review that Dr. P and I did recently, but we had a scheduling issue. One of my best friends, Victor, who is also a friend of yours, is the largest or biggest Michael fan that I know. Are you as big of a MJ fan as he is?
I would say larger, if I'm being totally
What?
honest, but he's not here to defend himself, if I'm being honest. What gives him the competitive edge is, the voice. The voice. We both sing, but man, when it comes to sounding just like Mike, he is undeniable, unbeatable. So for sure. But yeah, I'll give it to him. But he knows where the
Okay,
truth
I got you. I got you. So yeah, he'll have something to say about that, I'm
I'm
sure.
sure. I'm sure. But I'm never gonna deny the truth. But
Uh-huh.
at the end of the day, he and I knows where the true number one president, emperor of the fan club, that is me.
Yeah.
Okay. I hear you. I hear you.
Right, right.
I hear
It's
you.
okay. He can be, my Jermaine to my Michael.
Oh, oh.
Oh snap! Oh snap! That's
Oh, it sound like it's about to be a dance off in here.
Well, you might have both of us on, just to clear
Right,
the record,
that's
but that's
right,
okay.
that
right,
we might make
right.
that happen. I did not know that, so that's cool.
Especially if they're going to do a sequel, which I digress. I'll say my thoughts on a sequel to
There
Michael.
there is supposed to be a sequel in the works because of
Yeah,
the
yeah. It's that
success.
they've
Yeah,
given it the green light, so there will be a sequence.
Given the
Yes, there
green
will be a
light, even
sequel.
though there should not be one, but that's once again, I digress. We're not here for that today, so I'll leave that alone for now.
Okay.
so one thing I have to admit that I don't know about you,
Hmm?
Dr. Ron. Where did you grow up exactly?
I grew up in the most amazing city of all, the illustrious, premier, dynamic Decatur, Georgia. This is where I grew up. They say Decatur where it's greater. That's been our saying forever, but it really is greater. It's the best place on the planet that I believe, as far as success for all people, especially our people, when it comes to education and resources. You cannot beat Decatur, Georgia. Decatur, Lithonia, but same area, the Metro
Gotcha.
404, when there was
Yeah,
just one zip code
I got you.
years ago.
And you've worked in education at different levels.
Yes,
When
sir.
you look back, what originally pulled you into a career in education?
When I look back, thinking about why I decided to become an educator, I will be totally honest. It was not a thought on any level of mine. In college, it was not a thought at all, because that's typically where people will begin, their matriculation, right? They'll start going to school for preparation to become an educator. That was not what I wanted to do. I actually went to school for pre-med. That's
Mm,
really what I wanted to do. I'm
Mhm.
naturally good in science, not as good in math. And that's essentially where my story began and ended because I was not good at math. And I didn't know the power of a study group. If I'm being totally honest, I did not know the power of a study group. I did not take advantage of the resources that would have propelled me into a great career in medicine. So I
Right.
don't believe in living a life of regrets, but if I had to have a minor regret, that would be it, just not knowing how to navigate that road.
Yeah,
But
me
that's what I
too.
studied. Same thing, yeah. For you,
Yeah,
Dr. Hooks? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Same
So,
for me. I started out in pre-law.
mhm,
And so, and I digress. I was not a good science person, but I was good in math. So I
mhm,
ended up going into engineering, which is
mhm.
still not a bad field. However, if I could do it over, and like you said, no regrets, but if I could do it over, I would take the power of the study group,
Right. For
and,
sure.
and really dig deep into the law program. And I'm actually now in the midst of trying to get accepted at Arizona State University for the law program. For
Outstanding.
so we'll see how that works. I'm Diedrich had and I had made a pact that we would both go back to school and it would be for law. And we're doing I had talked about studying the LSAT together
Right.
and things like that. But yeah, that's one of my things. And I said to myself, you're never too old to do what you
No,
want to really do.
absolutely, absolutely. And I will say this, growing up, I was even accepted into a Meharry Medical College slash Tennessee State University pre-med program, if you will. It was called I forgot the name of the program. That was a little while ago, right? But I was looking at cadavers at Meharry Medical College at 17 years old because I graduated from Dunwoody High School at 17. And so that's just exactly what I thought I would do. That's what I knew I would do. But like I said, as the story detoured, I went down a different path and I found myself just kind of working odd jobs at Ruby Tuesday, worked at AT&T, but I was not thriving in those because I was not happy. And so I was laying on my couch one day and I was like, I don't even know what I could do. And literally it just hit me like, why don't you begin as a substitute teacher? Because I needed money, if I'm being totally honest. I just needed something to pay the bills. And I ended up becoming a substitute teacher. And I was a long-term sub, which simply meant that I was in one position for more than for about 3 months because
That's
the teacher
right.
was out on
Hmm.
maternity leave at the
Hmm.
time. And this is I started off at Lithonia High School in DeKalb County, and I loved it. And more so, I would suppose they said they loved me. They said you're naturally good at this. And so I said, okay, let me see what it takes to become a teacher. And I had three job offers on the table. One at Lithonia High School. This is a while back in 2005. One at Lithonia High School, one at Columbia High School, and one at Druid Hills High School. I took Columbia High School because, like I said, I grew up in Decatur. That was my neighborhood. And as they say, the rest is history. I fell in love with it. I was told that I was good at it. I really stayed in the classroom rather, for 9 years at Columbia High School. And then I was given some good advice. Sometimes you have to go to grow. And so then I left there and went to Newton County, where I stayed in the classroom for another 4 years. And at that time, I was being mentored by several principals and superintendents who saw the biggest light in me. They said, we believe that one day you could be a superintendent.
Wow.
And so that's how I began my journey into administration. Took the certification tests, learned anything and everything I could about it, and then put boots on the ground and secured my first role as an elementary assistant principal. And since then, I've essentially worked on the elementary level and the high school level, a total of 7 years as an administrator.
That's
But
great.
altogether 3 year middle school, high school, and elementary on some level. So,
Well,
Wow.
I have a question for you.
okay.
So, and I think, and this, I think it's just coming from our generation. I looked at how now kids are graduating from college and not necessarily going into their field um, of study.
Mhm.
And once I graduated from college, I was blessed. I was able to get into an EIT, which is an engineering training program, interim training program, where I would run around in different departments to figure out what I wanted to do, what I wanted to concentrate in as an engineer. But would you suggest, because I think most kids, when they graduate, or most students, when they graduate, the first thing that they do is if they cannot find a job in their field, they go into education.
Hmm.
because the need is there. So
Right.
would you suggest as an administrator that if, because I have a son that's soon to be graduating, and so he's had some very interesting internships, but do you suggest that some students take that route into going into education before or if they cannot find suitable employment in their field?
I do suggest that, and I suggest that for a myriad of reasons. Number one, I suggest it not only because of my personal opinion, but actually the state recognizes that need, and so we have alternate programs, alternate education programs that are designed specifically to take people who did not go to school for education and
Mm-hmm.
prepare them accordingly, right? So once
Right.
again, not just my opinion, but there's a plan for that. But the reason why I suggest it is because education has, in my opinion, an amazing transformative factor. It
Mm-hmm.
it really somehow, I say magically, allows for people to go into a classroom and really discover who they are.
Right.
There's nothing like going and looking at thirty kids. Hopefully it's 30. Sometimes
Hopefully it's
classes
30.
don't. Hopefully it's 30. 30 these days is considered heaven. It's considered paradise, due
Uh-huh.
to the rising class sizes. That's another conversation. But it's nothing like going in there. You're on the spot day one. You cannot fake it with them. They will help you find your truest, most authentic self, whether you like it or not.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a great refining fire, as I call it. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't think that education is a backup plan.
Right.
If I'm running a school, and one day I believe I will be running a school, I want the very best of the best in front of my students. But I often realize that we're not going to get the best day one. It's our responsibility as educational leaders to make them the best, to train them to be the best. So if you come to me with a willing spirit, if you love kids, you want to do right by kids, and you have the ability to learn your content, what you want to teach, I'll take care of the rest.
Mm-hmm.
I will make a man or a woman out of you when it comes to education. I promise you, you will leave my presence being stronger and better, and more efficient and more productive than where you are. So, anybody out there, hear me clearly. If you don't know what you want to do, maybe start off as a substitute teacher like I did. Just become exposed to the system of education. See if you like it. But like I said, you will know really quickly if it's for you or not. And if you hang in there, that course of a few months or a school year, if you can make it that far, you will find that the rewards are fantastic.
Well, I'm gonna hold you to that because
Okay,
I may send my son to you.
that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. What are his interests currently?
Well, right now he started out as a
Aerospace.
aerospace engineer major.
Okay. Okay.
And now at Tuskegee, he is at Tuskegee, but he switched majors. He's a business major now with his concentration into supply chain management and logistics.
Okay.
So it's a little bit of math, a lot of business, but he's really good with science.
Right.
And so we'll see what happens. He did a great internship this summer so far, and so he's
Right.
back home now. So we're just trying to let him see what it is that he wants to do for the rest of his career. To
Right.
start, I mean, he's young, so right now I think they're at an age when you're 20, 21, 22. You're just
Mhm.
trying to find your way and trying to find what it is that you want to do
For sure.
because I think we're in such a microwave society that our kids now want things right away. They want to make the money right away. They want the success right away. They want the recognition right away, not understanding that it takes time. Regardless of what you're trying to do, it's not going to happen. You're not going to wake up the next day. Even if you're doing your own business, I've had my own business before. And when you have your own business, you have to work three times as hard,
Right.
three times as hard for
Right.
yourself. And that's crazy, but you have to.
That's exactly right. The teacher shortage right now in this country of over 270,000 teachers. We need everyone, as many hands as possible on deck. The right kind of hands, don't get me wrong. But, like I said, the state of Georgia and many other states have plans for that. I know I heard you mention aerospace engineering. Is that what
Yes.
you said?
Yes.
We have pathways for engineering from people who are engineering majors to teach engineering in the high schools and the middle schools levels. We have people who teach business on the high school and the business level. So there's something for everyone. if he or she is interested. And once if that time comes, if your son wants to have a conversation with me, I'll be more than willing to do so.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
All
Hill.
right. All right. D Hill,
So
move
yeah,
forward.
so Dr. Ron, let's say her son did come to you and started off as a teacher, perhaps. What would he learn about students, families, and the system itself as you learned when you were a teacher?
Oh wow. That's a loaded question, right? Because that learning process is ever evolving. Some people say that students are not the same as they used to be.
Right.
I can see how that perception may be someone's reality, but that's not my reality. The
Okay.
students that I started teaching, working with 20 years ago, are the exact same students that exist today. Um, are the exact same students that surrounded me when I was inside of a classroom. And the reason I say that is because the systems and the structures are what help make a school. Let me back it up. They help make a student successful, right?
Mm-hmm.
A
Mm-hmm.
school cannot be successful without uh, an amalgamation of successful students,
Right.
right?
Right.
So we have to look at what we can control. There's a saying in education that we say that in order to grow a school, you have to start with four walls at a time, right? That's one classroom.
Mhm.
And so those students within that classroom, you have to focus on them individually and you have to show them that you care genuinely. And that trust is built over time. Now, I will say this trust is a lot easier to, I would say, a lot easier to navigate on the elementary level because they're all hugs most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And they want to hug on you and love you and
Yeah.
come up to you and they want to say, "Oh, I like your shoes. I like your shirt." All of those things,
Right.
right? But as the realities of life, kick in, as life gets harder for many people, middle school and high school, that trust is a little bit more difficult to navigate for older students. The spin-off of that though is this. But when you earn that trust with a middle schooler or a high schooler, they latch on and it's hard and it's serious and they take you seriously and they will defend you. They will defend you. They will do anything you ask of them because they know that you care. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of times, sometimes, depending on the community, they don't have serious, committed, long-term, consistent relationships and support structures at home.
Right.
Sometimes the best they have is at a school, right?
Right.
And so this is why I say, and I mean that the students haven't changed, because building trust hasn't changed. How we build trust is the same way we've done it since the beginning of time. You show that you care. You communicate with honesty. And if you have to make a tough decision, you do it in the best interest of a child. And you tell them why you have to make that decision, right? So I don't believe that children have changed, but the structures have changed. Education is political. I will be very honest with you.
Of course.
There are decisions that are made, trickle down decisions that are made at the state level. That's any state, no matter where we are
Mm-hmm. Right.
um, that are made at the federal level, excuse me, that trickle down to the state level,
Mm-hmm.
that sometimes rarely have to do with what's in the best interest of a child. It just may have been a political power move that may have benefited a small group of people, right?
Yeah.
But unintended consequences, right? Or
Right.
unintended side effects may have what may have started off with with the good intention may ultimately result in deleterious effects.
Mm-hmm.
And so that being said, the structures have to be looked at, they have to be revamped. We have to be okay with saying, you know what, this did not work and we're human. So it's okay that this didn't work, but how can we modify this? How can we change this to get back to where we need to be? And this is why you see, and this is why you see, at one point, they take cursive out of school, right?
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And now they're talking about bringing it back,
Right.
and things like that I can appreciate because that meant that someone said, we made a decision and it wasn't the best
And it
decision
wasn't the
and
best
and it
one.
wasn't the
Right.
best one, and that's okay.
Let me interrupt here
Okay.
because about 10 years ago, I predicted that cursive would be done away with.
Okay.
Why bring it back?
Why bring it back? Well, I will say this. There have been studies that show that cursive writing in cursive is not really about the handwriting itself.
It's about
It's
the.
a, say it again.
No, go ahead. Go
Oh,
ahead.
okay. It's a complex system. And
Hmm.
Okay.
it's about the thought processes that are involved when you write in cursive. That's really what it's about. And
Mm,
they've studied, they've identified a link between higher thought processes and rigorous thinking and cursive writing. Now,
I
don't
see.
get me wrong, it doesn't stand alone in and of itself, but because they realize that is a indicator of higher thought processes to bring it back. And it's as simple as that.
Well,
Yeah, I
I
think
see.
I think it has a lot to do with your neurons being more active when you're in the cursive writing mode,
Yes,
because you have to go to a higher level
right.
to actually your thought pattern into doing in cursive writing than to do a print writing.
Yes.
And I actually looked that up some time ago because I was like, why would they take cursive writing out of school systems? And then I thought about it, and then scientists were saying that it had a lot to do with the growth of the neuron patterns. You know.
Mm,
That's exactly right. Think about it like this, because I remember having to learn, and how I was taught was you put the pen down and you do not lift that pen until that word is done, right?
Yeah,
You
right.
yeah,
don't lift
yeah.
it. Every time you lift it, you've broken the pattern, right? But scientists have linked that to attention spans,
Hmm.
right? Because if you're having to write a long word out, a 10-letter word out or a 7-letter word, and you cannot lift your pen until that last stroke of that pen until it's done, and over time, that is promoting a sustained ability to focus. Right
Exactly.
now, if you just writing, the word February, February, and it's all broken up, that's directly connected to your ability to sustain attention to detail. So
Hmm.
all those things are connected. People don't
Hmm.
You
realize it.
see, it's probably because I have terrible handwriting that I didn't care that it stayed around. My handwriting looks the same as it did in fourth grade, probably.
Well, I'm gonna buy you the cursive writing book that we used to have when we were in
Okay.
school.
With the little
The
dashed
paper was
lines.
gray. Yeah, the dash
Yeah.
lines.
Exactly.
I'm gonna buy you that
Exactly.
book.
And
I'm gonna
and
buy
I
you
Well,
the
and I'll
book.
never forget the joy of starting off with the you had the solid line first, and then you
right.
had the dotted line, and then
Yeah.
being able to remove the
Then you
lines
had to go
altogether. Oh, you
up and
knew you were doing
down
it
and
big.
curve
When
around.
there were no more
Yeah.
lines, you knew you were killing it.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
right.
You could go up and get that star put on that piece of paper.
That gold star is what everybody wanted. That's what we all wanted.
Uh, oh man. Dr. Ron, you mentioned gaining the trust of students. Does that trust ever feel more like a burden than it is a privilege?
No, it does not necessarily feel like a burden, but I can tell you where it gets really heavy. I'll give a really good example. So I had a student who, well, let me say this. So remember I told you I taught on the middle school level.
Right.
Well, I had a really good bond with those students, and I had the opportunity to cycle back and become the assistant principal on the high school level for most of those middle
Those
school
students
students that I
got you.
taught when they
Yeah.
went up, right? And for a lot of them, it was their senior year or their junior year. So that connection was strong because essentially I had an opportunity to work with them, from sixth grade to their senior year on some level, right? But I
Right.
had a student who, I mean, we were thick as thieves, saw him several times throughout the day during transitions. I knew his family very well, had to make some phone calls home back in middle school, but we had that bond. And at the time, I also worked in a school district that was rather small. So it was a medium, small to medium district. Well, we had a strong bond. And unfortunately, I got a call over the radio asking for an administrator to come out to the parking lot. And unfortunately, that student was out there with the local law enforcement,
Mm,
and he had made some bad decisions where he had some illegal, uncontrolled substances in his car.
right.
You know, um, and it destroyed me. And as soon as I walked out to the parking lot and he saw me, he broke down in tears
Mm,
and fell. And now this is we're talking about an 18-year-old young man at this
yeah.
point, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Broke
Hmm.
down in tears on my arm, on my shoulder. And the police officers or the school resource officers, they didn't know that connection. They just thought it was the weirdest thing. They thought he was crying because he was in trouble. He said, and I said, no. Well, he said, no, I'm not crying. He said, I'm crying because I broke Mr. Edwards' heart.
Mm,
Hmm.
Because he knew how much we poured into him. he knew, just what kind of decision this would be. And so, I let him cry right there in the parking lot. We went inside, we talked about it. And I'm gonna say this, that trust I talked about is still so important, right?
Hmm.
Right.
Because they were asking him questions, they were doing their legal investigation. He was quiet as a mouse. And I said, let's try this. I said, you all step out, if you don't mind. Let me just talk to him one-on-one. I promise you I'm not going to withhold any information you need to know. But he opened up. He said, I don't trust police officers, but I trust you. And because he was so willing to just open up and be honest and tell me everything I need to know about how he got to that point, the law enforcement officers were able to talk to their superiors, and they were able to, as they say, go easy. Don't get me wrong, he still had his consequences, right?
Right. Right.
But it was because of that trust that we had
Hmm.
that he opened up with me, and I was able to help him navigate his next steps. That did result in, him being expelled from the school for a time being. Um, but but he was able to have a future still
Hmm.
because he was able to be honest, and he did not try to hide the information, and that was not possible without that trust. So that trust is important. um, it is heavy when
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
situations they attempt to compromise that trust, but
Hmm.
the trust itself is not a burden. But there are certain situations that students put themselves in that really, truly test my fortitude as an administrator, because I have to navigate that role of doing the right thing by the student, even if it hurts them,
Right.
And like I said, I'll never forget him. I will never ever forget him, as long as I live. But and he's doing fine now, believe it or not. He's done what he needs to do. He's successful now. For him, because he's in his early 20s. He's not yet
Okay.
25. Not yet
Gotcha.
25. So what I'm saying is he was able to get that foolishness out the way early in life, and he has a whole life ahead of him still, as
Beautiful.
opposed to, it could have been worse. So
Of course. Of course.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
you are also, I think, currently an instructional coach. Is that right?
yes, I am.
So walk us through a typical day of what that entails. What is an instructional coach and what do
Okay.
you do exactly?
I'll tell you all, like I tell my students all the time, as an instructional coach, my job is to help teachers become better teachers, right?
Mm.
Um, a consistently growing student is someone who is taught by a consistently growing adult, right? And so that's my job. That's what I do. I would compartmentalize my main responsibilities into three facets: instructional, closing identifying and closing instructional gaps,
Mhm.
providing professional development, and then providing individual teacher support. Those are the three main pillars of my job. Going back to the first one, we look at instruction from a classroom lens. Remember, we talked about the four walls at a time.
Hmm.
Yes.
So my job is to help the teacher identify resources to make them better, to provide them with instructional strategies, to help them differentiate that instruction. Because, like I said, if you have a classroom full of 30 students, they're all going to learn differently. So first, who are your students in front of you? What do they know, right? How do you know if they know it or not? So we use data. We look at their test scores, and I don't mean just standardized tests. I'm talking about just pop quizzes.
Mm.
We call them formative assessments, or a
Hmm.
common formative assessment where every teacher in that content area, like let's just say I'm working with biology or ELA, and there are four teachers, where all of them are given the same test, right? And we take that
Hmm.
data, and as teachers, and I help facilitate a meeting. We call it a professional learning community or a collaborative learning team, CLT. And I help them look at that data, identify gaps in instruction. And then also there's power in that too, because we can look and say, hey, for example, D Hill, you taught biology and your students were able to perform at an 80 or 90% mastery, where, Dr. Hooks, some of your students performed at 40 and 50. What did you do, D Hill? What did you do to help your students be successful
Right.
that Dr. Hooks could benefit from?
Mm.
So my role is to navigate those conversations, those meetings, and those opportunities for teachers to grow so they can grow their students. And that's the that's the closing gaps lens. From a professional development perspective, my job is to provide professional development, simple as that.
Yeah.
If the teacher needs classroom management skills, I
Mhm.
help them through that. If teachers need resources from an instructional technology standpoint, because technology is real, AI is real. And so
Mhm.
I help them navigate how to use those resources accordingly. And then, like I said, the last pillar is individual teacher growth. There's some teachers who may sit in a training and they hear the information, and their counterparts may easily grasp it, but they may need more support. And so I
Mhm.
will then work with an individual teacher to establish goals and
Right.
help them work through those goals in the classroom. We call that a coaching cycle, because you start at a certain place, and your goal is to really work them work them down
And more.
the needed
Mhm.
support. Exactly.
Right.
So, for example, I may have a teacher who really has a lot of needs. I may meet with them 2 or 3 times a week, and the goal is over the course of a month or two, to be able to bring that down to 2 times a week, to once a week, to now they're flying on their own. And I have several teachers that I work with in a coaching cycle. So those are my three main pillars, and that's what we do as coaches.
So,
So, oh, I'm sorry.
no, go ahead, please.
So I was going to ask, and I taught at North Clayton High School
Okay.
for a little while when I first got out of college, trying to figure out, what department, what I want to do with this engineering degree.
Mhm.
And I did have a great instructional coach. So, what is, in your perspective, what is one misconception people have about instructional coaches?
I think the biggest misconception that people have is they think that we're snitches. They think that we are spies for the administrators, and that is so not true. There are conversations that obviously we have to have with the admin team because we are a team, and some people struggle with that. And I feel like what happens is they may have had a bad experience or two or three, and at some point in their educational career, and unfortunately, they look at coaching from a negative lens for whatever reason they may have had. But that's why I'm consistently and constantly working with teachers to let them know I am not working with you from an evaluative standpoint. I have the benefit of working sidecar right next to you through the work. The only time I have to communicate something to an administrator is if there's something just egregious,
Mhm.
that I cannot withhold because that would be considered educational malpractice,
Right.
right? But outside of that, no, whatever we talk about, whatever we work on together, it stays here. Actually, I'll say this too because administrators, me being one at one point in time, me being because administrators have so much on their plates, they really heavily rely on us
Right.
to solve issues
Mm-hmm.
before it gets to them, if I'm being totally honest, because that's why we're hired. Well, that's not why we're hired 100%, but it helps the whole team. If I see a teacher who's struggling with classroom management or grasping a particular instructional strategy, let me work through it with you. I have the time. I am unencumbered. I don't have students attached to me, and I'm also not doing discipline. I'm also not running fire drills. I'm also not coordinating testing. I'm also not handling 504s. My job is to help you, and that's it. So let me work through this with you so that when your administrator comes in, you can shine and you can be the best
So you're
partner.
more like the liaison between the classroom instructor and the actual administration.
That is one way you can look at that. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Because all of our guidance and expectations and directives come from the administrators, right?
Mhm.
We all get them the same, but I have a unique position to help you navigate your understanding and your arrival to that expectation so that when they come in for their official observation, you
Mhm.
you got it down packed. My goal is
Yeah.
to get in there before they do,
Mhm.
um, and work with you along the way. And that work is not contrary to the administrator; it is supplementary to the administrator.
Mhm.
So I know it might be different from case to case, but
Mhm.
let's say at point A, Dr. Ron gets involved with a particular teacher and then he exits at point B.
Mhm.
What is the difference from point A and point B? How is that success of what you did measured?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think of that all the time because that is a personal reflection on my ability to be
Mhm.
successful, right? Um, it depends on the goal, right?
Yeah.
So let's start with classroom management because you can't teach without good classroom management.
Right.
Let's just say there's a teacher who is really struggling with managing their class, and what I mean by that is, they'll start talking, kids are not listening to them at all.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Um, there are students who are, excuse me, constantly out of compliance, like on their cell phone. Even coming to class late is a form of classroom management, right?
Mhm.
Because of the expectation that you have to be on time. So if there's a teacher who's struggling with classroom management, day one, I will go into the classroom. I will simply observe. I'll be quiet. I will make notes of what I've seen,
Mhm.
um, no matter how many issues there are. Now, a good coach will not overload and overburden a teacher with too many things to work on at one time because
Mhm.
that's, you have to, success is measured oftentimes in small wins, right? Small steps. And so what I will do is I will look at the most egregious issues that may be present at that time. Let's say there's a laundry list of 7 things. I'll say, okay, these 2 right here, maybe these 3 are what we're going to focus on for this week and the next week, right?
Mhm.
Let's just try this. So for example, if a student is not listening, excuse me, if you're trying to teach and you want to get their attention, and let's just say you need a prompt, and people laugh because this is so elementary, but it really does work. You say class, 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 and they'll say yes, yes, yes. The kids will say that, right?
Awesome.
You'll clap your hands 1, 2, 3. Eyes on me. It works. It
Yeah.
really
Wow.
works. And I'll be honest. Now, saying it on the high school level is a little different,
Right.
but there are things that you can do to get their attention. I tell teachers all the time, if you say, "Hey, class, listen up. I need your attention," you stop and you don't say another word until you get
Then
your
they're automatically. Mhm.
right. Because when that room gets quiet like that and they realize that you're not moving forward, they're like, what's wrong with him? What's wrong with her? And that's when your opportunity, that's when you say, okay, now that I have your attention, let's move forward. One of the things that I would do is I would say, class, just one time, class. And I'll wait for them to get quiet. If they weren't getting quiet when I needed to, I would say, class, I'm not going to wait all day on you. I'm
Mhm.
not. That's not why I'm here. And you have to do those things initially. I would say the first 30 days, you have the first 30 days to get your
Mhm.
class right so that the rest of the school year runs smooth. So once again, what that looks like is I would start with small goals, work with the teacher on providing instructional strategies, resources, classroom management skills to help them reach those small wins. And then once they've met those goals, I titrate down. You know what? Great job. This is what you've done. My success is measured by the effectiveness of the goal that we set.
Mhm.
Yeah.
If that
And for me, when I was in the classroom setting at North Clayton, we actually had to stand outside our door
Mhm,
during the change of class, and then usher in the students at the sound of the bell. But for me, I did journaling
mhm,
as a way to get classroom control. And that entailed me actually handing out, I had one student, I would pick one student every week to hand out journals, and they would get like extra points just for doing the handing out of the journals. And
mhm,
then at the end of the week, you could accumulate 1 point per day
mhm,
for journaling um, during non-instructional time, like if we were finished going over instructions, and then to keep the chatter down and to keep it not being a disruptive mode for other students that were still in their instructional period time, they could journal and earn extra points during the week for a cumulative of an extra 100 points at the end of the school term, or the end of the 6 week course. And that worked for me. So I think, like you said, you have to find out what really works for you as the student, the instructor, and what kids you're actually dealing with, and
right,
finding out what their needs are and finding out what motivates them. I think classroom control is about what motivates the student, what is motivating the student. I always tell them that they start out with an A, with a 100 in the classroom, and it's up to them to keep the 100. I'm giving
right,
it to you.
right,
I'm giving you a 100 to start out with. And over these 6 weeks, it's up to you how we determine if you keep that 100 or if you dwindle it down. And that for me worked. And like I said, you have to depend on, and looking at the students that I had, that worked.
right. You said high school, right?
Mm-hmm.
People, let me say this, people don't realize just how effective some of those elementary techniques really are on the middle and high school level. One thing I would do is, and people laugh when I say this, but there's always going to be one class clown, right, in every classroom. There's always going to be
Mm-hmm.
one student who comes in there and their life mission is to be disruptive, right? That was my favorite one a lot of times. I called them the big bad wolf on the block. And my goal was to show them that there's one big bad wolf, just slightly more bad than you, right? And that's me. Because if I could quote unquote tame that wolf in the classroom, everybody else
Everybody
falls in
else.
suit.
That's right.
Everybody else falls in suit. And so that's what I would do. I would find that one big bad wolf. I would let them know, hey, I want you to be my helper. I want you to do this for me. I would shine and love on them so much that it would break them down so easily. And
Mm-hmm.
because they really, 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 like I said, their goal was to disrupt. And so people don't realize, getting students to help you, that's a form of building that trust we talked about, those relationships. Really helping students to understand that you have a role in my classroom, whether you realize it or not.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just to be a student. All of those things really help. And as a coach, my job is to help those teachers identify those strategies. I tell people all the time, it's like playing a video game, like an RPG role-playing game. Anytime you go through a game, you have like your utility belt, right? And you have
Mm-hmm.
all kinds of weapons of choice that you have to use to fight different monsters throughout the day. Same thing in the classroom. You have to always have a utility belt of different strategies, of different techniques, of different skills and resources, and you got to change it out as you go through the year.
Mm-hmm.
What
Mm-hmm.
worked in August, I guarantee you won't work in October.
Mhm.
I guarantee it. And
Yeah,
so that's my job is to help them understand what resources they have and help them become better, stronger, faster, and to ultimately grow our students.
gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll move to a different area of influence, I guess. It is said that when schools thrive, the communities that hold them thrive also. So,
Mhm.
from your experience, what are the most direct ways that a strong school impacts the local economy?
Well, I love this. When I say I love this topic, because a lot of people do not know the direct connection between the school and community economic development.
Right.
So when I worked in the world of career technology, I had the opportunity to work with the state level chambers of commerce throughout the state. People do not realize that. Okay, let me start by saying this. So schools have report cards, if you will,
Right.
right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's called CCRPI. These are scores of measures of accountability that simply indicates how well a school is doing as defined by the Georgia Department of Education, right?
Right.
And so essentially based on 100, the higher the score, the better the school is doing. And the school is rated in a few different areas, closing gaps. In other words, your students started here and you were able to grow them. How well were you able to grow them? Also, they're measured in your ability to grow students in subgroups. So your historically underserved populations, so your African American students, um, Hispanic students, also your students who speak different languages, whereas English may not be their first language, also special education students, and gifted students as well. These are what we call subgroups. So your performance or your CCRPI score is also measured by your ability to grow them. In addition to that, school culture and climate is big. In other words, what does your teacher retention rate look like? How often are teachers leaving your school? How many fights do you have?
Mhm.
What is the environment like? Because a school with all kinds of barriers to instruction,
Yeah.
it's really difficult to grow a school when you have fighting all the time, when you have students who walk into class whenever they want to, when they're in class they have cell phones and headphones and iPads, like they have like five screens surrounding them, and so
Yeah.
all of these variables, long story short, factor into what's called a CCRPI score. This score is published on the state website, and communities, big box stores, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Whether it's Best Buy or Longhorn
Mm-hmm.
Steakhouse or Walmart, they have people on their team whose job is to look at the productivity of the schools in that system. The reason why that's important is because the better the school is
Mm-hmm.
performing, typically your highest earners want to move into those communities because that is a good school or a great school, right?
Right.
In other
Right.
words, no one wants their child to go to a quote unquote a bad school. So once again, the higher the performing the school, the more financial resources are going to be poured into that community, the more stores and commerce want to plant roots in that community. All right.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Then what happens is the housing developments.
Yes.
They then want to come in and they want to build in these communities where people want to live and work and play. Do you see how it's all connected?
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because if you have a school that's underperforming, people don't want to live there. People don't want, well, the highest earners may not want to live there. Stores don't want to plant themselves where the money does not reside, as they say, because they're not going to be sustainable there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it's all connected. And then another piece of that is when you have a school that's performing well, you want a place where people can graduate and still reside in that community. Yes, they may go off to college,
Mm-hmm.
for a time being, but they may want to come back home and you want to have a community where they want to come back to. And
Hmm.
if that community is not thriving because the schools are bad, which affects the economic development, which affects the housing, then you have a community overall that's going to be suffering. And we have seen that in so many communities in the greater metro Atlanta area. It's very real. It's the writing is on the wall. People just don't understand that connection. So when we go back to talking about in the beginning of the conversation, those systems and structures in place, the kids
Right.
haven't changed, but the structures have changed. And
Mm-hmm.
because those school structures have changed, communities have fallen. And this is why easily you can see, a store that's open today and now they're closed tomorrow. And then what
Mm-hmm.
happens? One store closes, another store closes, and before
Yeah.
you know it, you
It's an
have
avalanche.
Oh,
it's an
yeah.
avalanche. It is
Yeah.
an avalanche, and it's directly connected to the success of that school.
Mm-hmm.
So we're looking at the success of the school, but what role do the parents and those community partners have in improving the school also?
Parents have a huge role because they are the advocate. Well, let me say it this way. They're the money spenders. They're the money earners and the money spenders, right? And so they have an obligation, in my opinion, to protect their asset. If you worked hard your whole life and you go out there and buy a house, and now you're having to deal with neighbors that are not the best because that school fell down, then guess what? You should be at that school advocating for the very best resources to the Board of
Mm-hmm.
Education. If teachers are saying that they are experiencing difficulty teaching because you have 45 kids in a classroom, they're
Mm-hmm.
not making that up. They're not just complaining about their job. They're telling you it is difficult. So what can we do as parents to advocate for this? Parents need to march on Rome as they will, to go to the Board of Education and insist on looking at how money is being spent. Where are the funds going? Because, it's there. Now, I'll say this too. Everyone wants to save a dollar where they can, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody wants to. But at a certain point, resources are connected to money. So for a time being, that may mean that the millage rate has to be affected, right, in the community.
Yes.
Yeah.
That you may have to pay a little bit more in
Mm-hmm.
property taxes so that the school can then get a bigger piece of that financial dividend, which can then be put into the school for greater resources and for better staffing. Whew, we're not even going to talk about that. Teachers' salaries, there's a direct connection towards
Mm-hmm.
teacher salaries and teacher retention.
Right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The more you pay teachers, typically the longer and let me say this, I'm not just saying this off the cuff of my head. My
Yeah.
dissertation was on teacher retention, and I looked at the variables that affect, and there was a positive correlation between how much teachers make and their long-term careers in education. There's a direct correlation to that, right? And so when you have teachers that are making more in a particular community or district, then right next to them, we live in Metro Atlanta.
Yeah. They're
Shooting
going,
is real. You don't mind driving 30, maybe 45 minutes
right.
to go make $20,000, $35,000
That was about
more.
more. That's
And
right.
though, but who benefits the most? The students who live in that community where those teachers are leaving where they live
Mm-hmm.
to come over there and make it better for them. And so once again, parents have a I want to say an obligation. I believe it's an obligation, but they at least have the right to go and talk to their local board of education to discuss. And when the board comes up with a solution, be flexible, be amiable. Don't point fingers at the board all the time and say, this is what you're doing, this is what you're not doing. Rome wasn't built in a day. So like I said, if the board gives suggestions, be flexible and see how this could pay out long term. I've seen that change happen.
Mm.
Yeah, I actually was a major advocate for Henry County.
Hmm.
And I was at the board meetings every time there was a board meeting. Every time a district councilman was running, I was at their forum to actually see what their goal was for education,
Right.
and then go back and look at what their forum was on education, and then call them on it. I think for one, parents get the idea that it's not for me to do. Um, and that's the attitude that I caught when I was actually a part of Henry County school system, is that most parents were like, well, they won't listen to me anyway. Well, I always used to say, if you go in numbers, when you have to go in numbers, and having one person against 10 people, 10 people still not a lot, but it's better than one. We,
Right.
as you said, we as parents have to take the responsibility of wanting more for our children in the communities where we spend money.
Right. Right. I
And
mean,
I,
that
and
that's it.
I just, and I look at, and I'm not bashing Henry County, but I look at the high school there, Eagles Landing High School. The administrator that was there once my son left, because we wound up leaving the Henry County school system. But I think she was just forced and was actually faced with so much adversity,
Mhm.
where your school system actually um, your students had outgrown the school.
Mhm.
And so what do you do with a school that only can house 1,500, but there's no moratorium on development there. And so you have more, developers coming in, building homes, houses, apartment complexes. Now you have an influx of students coming in, but not enough resources to pay the teachers and to take the T-SPLOS money and actually expand the school system.
Right.
So, in my thing, if you could redesign that relationship between the schools and the communities and the parents, what would you change first?
There has to simply be a meeting between every entity that impacts. In other words, the school system cannot work in silo. The school system has to work in tandem with their local chamber of commerce. It has to be a bedside partnership because they work so well together. Well, excuse me, because the work is connected, whether they realize it or not. So,
Mhm.
um, and in my opinion, what I would change is at the ensure that there's a place for the local chamber of commerce on the board. Make sure that there's a position designed specifically for that person to be there, so that they are at all of the meetings, so that they can hear the conversation. Also, I would change the role of, okay, so we have parent teacher nights.
Mhm.
I would
Right.
intentionally ensure that parents are educated on topics just like this. Mom, Dad, are you aware that every time you go to the gas station, there's a percentage of that money that goes back into the school system? Did you even know that? And do you understand that every time every time that there's and I mean this in a positive way, but every time that there's a rental home in your community, that could have a negative impact on the economic development and the school. Like, in other words, I would make sure that there's a strong educational component for parents. We
Mhm.
do a good job talking to students about what they need to know, right? But we need to do a better job. School systems need to do a better job with educating parents on how school improvement affects them 100%. That's what I would change the most. Being very intentional about that,
Mhm.
holding local politicians, like you said, to the fire. Um, when they're running for office, like we're in midterm elections right now, right? Whoever's running, say, hey, look, what is your goal for education? Because guess what? If there's not a goal for education, if that's not
Right.
even on their platform at all, I guarantee you there's nothing that's going to be done about it. But if you set at least one goal,
Mhm.
that means that you can at least begin to have conversations towards it,
Mhm.
right? So I would hold local politicians to the fire. And if education is not one item on your agenda, then you're gone. Easy as
Mhm.
that, because it's
Mhm.
all in tandem. I would say this as well. Um, well, I'll just say that. I'll stop with that.
Okay. Great points. Great points. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
So I guess schools and I want to jump to us preparing our students for the future.
Okay.
Um, what does a healthy school to workforce pipeline look like in 2026 to you? With everything else that we've talked about, if we put it all in one nutshell, if we combine all these antiquated ideas, all of these suggestions, all of these points, if we could bring them home, what does a healthy school to workforce pipeline look like for you in 2026?
A healthy school to workforce pipeline simply looks like whenever uh, the highest graduation rate possible, right? Right now, the state graduation rate averages in the 70s, the lower to mid 70s for many reasons. Okay, so working on increasing the graduation rate across the state, especially in the local community. Where's the equity where you have one school who has a 98% graduation rate and a school maybe 10 minutes away in the same district has a 66% graduation rate, right? So looking at graduation rates, taking a deeper dive and saying, what is the school doing over here that's working that we could benefit from in another school, right? Because increasing the graduation rate now gives students the ability to say, because I've graduated, am I going to go directly to college? Am I going to go into the military? Or am I going to go directly into the workforce? Those are our three main veins, right? Um, Either one of those is fine. It depends on what the student wants and what's in the best interest of the student. That's not the problem. The problem is students are not graduating, on time like they need to, and they're not graduating equipped enough to be the very best versions of themselves right past that diploma stage. And so bringing all of this together, making sure that students graduate on time, and then having a plan of action that they're working towards while in high school. If you know that you want to go into the military, then we need to make sure that you are ASVAB ready. You've taken that military test your junior year so that you can take it again your senior year to get the very best score, because the very best score in the ASVAB means the better jobs in the military. If you want to go into college, we're giving you the PSAT, the practice SAT, as a ninth grader, right? That you have exposure to that test. Take it again in 10th grade, so that by the time you get to your junior year, you've hopefully earned a super high score that makes you competitive to go to college. And then you take it one more time in your junior year. In schools, let's find resources that pay for this PSAT. Because right now the state of Georgia does a great job. They pay for all 10th graders to take it, but that's
wow.
it. They do. They do a great job for 10th graders, but you need exposure to it more than once. And some parents cannot afford to pay for it their freshman year and their junior year. So let's find resources for that. Like I said, making sure that once they graduate, students know where they're going and that they are prepared for that. And if they want to go directly into the workforce, this is where that Chamber of Commerce comes in. Let's have a Chamber of Commerce community fair, where students can interview on the spot while they're in their senior year, knowing that they're going to stay in the community. You know, bring in the local
That's,
warehouses that we have,
yeah.
bring in the local jobs that we have. Vocation is huge right now. There's a shift, D, there's a shift, Dr. Hooks, or where studies are showing that students are not going to college nowhere nearly at the same rates they were 15 years ago. Nowhere near it. So, and for many reasons, part of that is student loans. What has affected student loans now are federal changes, are political laws that have taken place. You know,
Right.
when I was in school, you can go and get a loan an infinite amount of money, which
Right.
may or may not have been, best for a college student, but it was not limited. Now it's capped on your major.
Mm.
So if you want to go major in education, they're only going to give you enough money that covers your educational expenses. Where that could be a good thing on some levels, but what if I change my major?
Yeah.
What if I don't want to do that? What I'm young still. I may want to do different things in life. And so, like I said, because there's a shift and we're seeing a lot more vocational careers, which America was built on anyway, right? If I'm being honest, let's embrace that. Let's take some time to really bring these community fairs to the schools and give them the vocational training they need. Some of it they can achieve while they're in school. So when they graduate, they have everything they need. I have students who are welders now. They graduated from high school, they went straight into a welding community. A welding program within the community, and they make way more than I do right now. Way
Yeah.
more than I do. But that's because that school and that school system, that community were prepared to equip them out the gate. We have to get rid of this, 18 years old, you're on your own. You're out of my house mentality. Because very rarely are they going to be. We have
Right.
to get rid of that. We have to, and if you want them to be, then fine. But what have we done as a ninth grader, as a 10th grader, 11th grader to make sure that they're ready for that? So when they hit 18, they know where to go. Students struggle with confidence. They're scared because they
And,
don't know
and
what
I
happened.
say that for, I say that for these sophomores and juniors in college as well.
That's right.
We're saying, okay, you're graduating next year. So what is your plan? Because you can't live here. I'm gonna give you 6 months to
Right.
figure out what you're gonna do. Well, have they been prepared? Have they been taught? Have they been, mentored? Have they been given instructions? Can they go out and even buy their own deodorant, soap, toothpaste? Because as I won't say new age parents, but most kids have not been driven to do those things on their own. So what now? And like you said, kids are scared. They're afraid that society has them where they don't know what to do. I learned the other day that my son was like, well, I don't want to go too far from my mom, but why not? And the only thing I could think of is just that life, he's afraid of life, doing life by himself right now.
Yes.
I don't
Yeah.
think,
That.
let me just break, I don't think that's it. I think as a son, it's more so of being able to protect your mother. I just want to put that out there.
Huh. Oh, okay.
Oh,
Look,
okay.
look, look, I'll take that. I'll
Right.
take that.
But go
So
ahead, Dr.
I
Ed.
love how you said that. I want to say what my mom taught me a long time ago. She said the best thing you can do for me is to get out of my pockets.
Mhm.
Right? So in other words, my mom didn't need physical protecting, and some mothers may. I do understand that, right? But I think across the board, the best thing a child can do for their parent is to be more successful than their parent would have been or is. No matter how successful you are as a parent, your child can do more because of the resources that you provided. And I want to go back. I'm always going to be a parent advocate because, Dr. Hook, you said it. You said, parents might not have known. We have to remember. So I'm 47 years old right now. I know I don't look a day past 25. I grade early. And I get that. I'm very grateful, right? Right, right, right.
Right, right,
Exactly.
yeah, right, right.
We look good, y'all. I want to say that commercial
Yeah,
break.
we
We look
do. We
good, right?
do. We
That
do.
Palmer's, I'm telling you, works every time. But I want to say this. I'm 47 years old. My generation, when I was in high school, we were the generation of that teen pregnancy epidemic.
Hmm.
It the generation right above me is where it started, but when I was in high school, that's when it was serious. I mean, teens having children, it was bad. The past 15 years, it slowed down a great deal. There's
Yeah,
research that shows that. I mean, it slowed down a great deal for various reasons. But grandmothers today are my age. Or
yeah,
when I
mine
was
too.
Or
growing up,
younger. Or
grandmothers
younger.
or younger, right?
Yeah.
Or when I was growing up, like grandmother, you knew a grandmother. She looked the part, she acted the part. We're talking about, 60 and up. And so because of that epidemic of teen pregnancy, you had people with serious responsibilities way too soon in life, right? Before they
Hmm.
can even take care of themselves. And so now what you're talking about, you're having a child at 16 years old, you have an 18-year-old bill, a serious bill,
No doubt.
hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of their lives without you even having the opportunity to earn $30,000 or
Hmm.
$40,000. So now automatically you're at a deficit. And so I'm not gonna be the person to sit here and blame. But I am the kind of person to say that it takes education on every level. We have to educate the kids, we have to educate the parents,
Parents.
we have to educate
Hmm.
the grandparents.
Yeah.
My favorite saying in life is assume nothing, teach
It's
everything.
everything. Right.
Assume nothing, teach everything. So, like you said, when you say to your son, "What is your plan?" If your son, if your whoever it is, can't spit out that plan immediately, guess what? That means they don't have one.
Right.
They're not holding back. They're not just making you wait in
Yeah, they
suspense.
just don't have
They
one.
don't have one.
They
And
don't have
that's when you
one.
pivot immediately and say, okay, what? You know what? You don't have your plan. Or if they do, let's enhance it. Let's see what can be better. And I found that most success comes from not a failed plan. It comes from not having one at all.
Yeah. Dr. Ron, I'm going to do my administrative duties here to make sure you're good. How are we on time right now? Are you, because I know there's something coming up within the next hour or so.
I'm actually good on time, so I was actually monitoring my time. He actually just texted me and said he needs to come tomorrow. So we can
Okay.
we can do another 30 minutes if that's fine.
Okay,
You
great,
need to.
great.
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Wonderful.
This is this
This
is
is
it.
some great information. This is very interesting. And I think that um not only parents, but I think if we could share this with our graduating high school seniors, with our juniors and sophomore, junior, and seniors, college graduates, this is some great information on both levels. And I think that moving forward, I think if we as parents can educate other parents,
Hmm.
not just our kids, but educate other parents. Even I look at myself, most of my son's friends are his age. They don't, I don't really have a network now that have kids in school.
Hmm.
You're 47, I'm 59.
Hmm.
So
Wow.
I don't really have, right.
Look
I
great.
don't,
Sorry,
thank
you look
you.
great.
Thank you. Thank you. So I don't really have a network that have a lot of kids in school. So I'm looking at all of my friends that have kids in college and would want to say to them, I really think that now is the time to start asking your young adult what their plans are and how can we as parents help them forge those plans forward and not do it for them.
Right. Um, that's tough, right? What I've seen as an administrator, I've seen too many parents really they struggle with cutting the apron strings.
Mhm.
Mm. For whatever reason. And I know it's hard. I
Mhm.
know it's hard. Um, but there has to be a level of progression when it comes to that, because what's going to happen is the longer the parent holds on to doing everything for the child, it really just delays their ability to manage life. I always tell people this, and maybe my mom was, nah, no, never mind. She did it the right way. I'll say that. When I turned 12 years old, I did get a birthday gift, but one of my birthday gifts, I got a bundle. I'll never forget this. I received an ironing board. I received an iron. I received my own laundry kit, laundry basket, you know,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
I thought that was the weirdest thing. I mean, I really, really did. And she said, Jesus was a man at 12 years old, so shall you be also.
Wow.
Right? And
Wow.
it was a series of responsibilities that she provided to me at an early age,
Mhm.
because, when you try to make an adult in their 20s and they have to learn everything
Everything.
all
Oh
at
my
Yeah.
once,
God.
Yeah.
that's too much.
Whew.
No
That's
doubt.
too much. That's too much. And so, like I said, it started off with a laundry kit, but what did that laundry kit do? And I'll be honest, the first time I used the iron, I did what? I burned
Burnt
myself,
some
About
clothes.
right?
You
yourself.
I
burnt
did.
Yeah.
yourself.
I
Wow.
did. I did. I'm very first time. But guess what? I learned how to iron. I learned that if it's hot, if it looks like it's hot, it's hot. That's not just a lesson on ironing, you all. That's a lesson in life.
Right.
When I can look down the road and I see that there are people that I'm hanging out with, and these are red flags, as the kids call them these days, I don't have to go that, I don't have to get burned anymore. I know it's hot. I don't have to go down that road. I can learn from these mistakes. Um, these little responsibilities that she gave me. She put me in the kitchen one day, said, "You're gonna learn how to cook," because she knew that I needed to be an adult one day for myself and for my
Mm-hmm.
family,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
and these responsibilities have to be given to children as children so that
Mm-hmm.
as they go through their teen years in adulthood, the progression of responsibility can be higher and they can be more successful. That's just how I look at
Yeah.
it. I want to
Yeah.
say this. Do you said this earlier? Well, I think you had a question related to it. Personal finance. Well, never mind. I'll wait till you. I'll
No,
wait till you. But
I'll
this,
ask that now because I wasn't sure if you wanted to touch on it, but when I was in high school in
Mhm.
particular, as I look back, one of the courses or one subject that definitely would have helped me in life, would have helped everybody in life, is something that taught us about personal finance or money management. And I think I did not take home economics, but I think they used to touch on it in home
Yeah, they
economics, if
did.
I'm not mistaken.
When I was in school, they did. Yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't take that, and so I never really got that type of instruction. So are today's schools pushing that at all as far as teaching students about money, and what are your thoughts on that?
So back in 2005, 2006, the state was toggling with these ideas in education called pathways, right?
Okay.
And the goal and the concept of the pathway was to say, okay, everything that we teach in education should directly connect to a career at
Hmm.
some point, right?
Okay.
Think about it like this. Every single thing they learn has to connect to a particular career, as opposed to everything they learn or are learning connects to being successful for a career or to be career ready. There's a difference. Let me say it a different way.
Okay.
What happened is they said, whatever these kids learn, these electives, all right. So the name switched from home economics to family and consumer science education. I know
Mm-hmm.
that because I taught that. That's actually what I taught when I first started,
Okay.
right? Family and consumer science education, it was an elective. And what they envisioned was students who want to go into whether it's childcare, early child, excuse me, teaching as a profession, so becoming a teacher, or going into the world of culinary arts or nutrition and wellness or interior design, right? Those are your major hubs, all stemming from home economics. These are the careers they're going to go into so they can take this class. As opposed to saying that some of these skills that they're learning in home ec or family consumer science are applicable in every aspect of life, no matter what they do as a career,
Yeah.
right? So when the state shifted from basic concepts needed for everybody and across the board now to funneling them and attaching them to certain careers. Now you have certain students who, if they don't want to be a chef in life, if they don't want to be an interior designer, if they don't want to be a teacher,
Yeah, they're
now
not
they're
taking
not going to get these certain skills that family
it.
and consumer science education provided. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When that shift happened, you now saw a lot of fundamental skills being provided only to a certain group of students. Now,
Mm.
that's one aspect, right? But let's look at the reality. Let's talk about this and make it very clear. If you're talking about personal finance, banking, how to buy a car, how to buy a house, how to understand interest rates, right?
Exactly.
These are critical. How to do laundry, how to prepare for yourself, how to go grocery shopping, how to comparison shop, to save money over time, how to save money. If all of these life essential skills are now connected to being a teacher, or to, well, yeah, or to that pathway, what's the one thing that most people are being taught about teachers? What are some things that you heard about being a teacher?
They don't make a lot of money.
Yeah.
They don't make a lot of money. Who wants to go and be an educator when the first thing they hear is their whole life they don't make a lot of money? That's the one thing.
Right.
And then on top of that, the other thing they hear is what? Well, I'm not dealing with those bad
Those
kids.
kids. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So
I'm not
now
dealing
you
with those
put
kids.
right. So now you put all of these life essentials attached to a career
Mhm.
that most of the world doesn't want to go into. So where are you even going to get exposure to these life fundamental skills? Because it's not no longer being offered widespread.
Mm.
Um, the
So
same
once
thing could,
again, I'm sorry, remember I
yeah,
talked about the core political moves, right?
yeah,
Political
of course.
agendas. that don't necessarily always have the best outcome. Go ahead.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. I was going to say social studies. Um, I might use some of my social studies that I learned in conversation here, but I don't personally know anybody who study a lot of history and are making money from it. So the same thing could be said for that. Don't get rid of social studies. That's not what I'm saying.
Mhm.
But I mentioned specifically personal finance and money management, these things where people learn about how money works, the power of accruing interest, saving money and using it for potential purchases such as a home.
Mhm.
Um, these things are extremely important. Are you saying that they shouldn't be the responsibility of the school to teach them, or that it?
No, no, I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead, please. No,
No, no.
I
No,
don't
what
think
I'm
that's
saying
what
is,
Dr. I don't think that's what Dr. Edwards was
yeah,
saying.
that's what I'm.
I just think that he was saying once when you clump that all into one class
uh,
setting or
pathway, right?
yeah,
A
one
career pathway. Mhm.
instructional
Right.
class, and then you have students that are not when that class is geared to a specific set of students, then those specific set of students are the only students that are getting that knowledge.
Right.
Right.
When your entire school system should be getting the same knowledge, when you have 20% of your students getting the knowledge and 80% are not, where is the disconnect? That's the problem.
But
Instead of
that's
doing it across the board, I don't think it's you understand what I'm saying? Instead of saying we're
mhm,
not going to use it as economics, we're going to use it as a mandatory class for these students. Put it as a mandatory class instead of putting as an elective, because just as anything else, is if it's an elective and you're given a choice of sitting in a classroom or taking PE as an elective where you're playing basketball all day long. What do you think most students are gonna want to do, because they don't want to do the homework? So they're
right.
not going to take the elective. They're going to take the easy way out. And I think in Dr. Edwards' defense, I think he's just saying that the state of Georgia, instead of looking at it as a class that should have been taught as a mandatory class, so
Mhm.
that everyone would get those skills, it's only taught to a select set of students. Because if I want to be a chef, of course I'm going to take that class. If I want to go into owning my own daycare, of course I'm going to take that class. But what about the student who wants to go to school to be an engineer? He or she still needs to know about finance. He or
Right.
she still needs to know how to buy grocery. He or she still needs to know what it's like to be a parent. So where was the disconnect, or where is the disconnect with that? I think that's the problem.
And so tying this back to parent advocacy, right? We
Right.
Mm-hmm.
talked about earlier what parents can do. So the Georgia DOE, the state does mandate certain courses that are required for everybody. The local school system does have the autonomy to supplement and say, hey, I want all of our, as a superintendent, I want all of my students under my purview to take personal finance. A local school system can do that. But if parents don't even know that, you understand what I'm saying? This is the
Mm-hmm.
kind of education that they need. Yes, they do take the mandatory class the state mandates, but why not be a dynamic school system that's out the box, that's competitive, and says, you know what, they're going to take ELA, math, social studies, and science, foreign language, but they're all our kids. They're also going to take personal finance. And
Mm-hmm.
I would say this too. Place it on every level. Have them take it in fifth grade before they leave elementary school. Have them take it again at eighth grade before they leave middle school. Have them take it as a junior or senior, and you write the standards for that class, right? And it
Right.
builds upon itself. So now you can say not only have they been exposed to it and taught it, but now there's a certain level of mastery they have to have and proficiency, and they received it three times over. And then let's
Mm-hmm.
go one step further. Give them a certificate of proficiency, right?
Absolutely.
Partner with local community colleges, partner with local personal finances, financing companies and banks. because people don't realize this, you all. Corporate America, good companies, they require their employees to have so many community hours where they give back to the community. I know that because I've worked with banks where we've had bankers come in and they've taught my students because they have to anyway, as a part of their job. They have to give so many hours every year to give back to the community. Let's partner with these community with these corporations, but it starts by the parents knowing or being educated to what they can require and request of their local school system. It is not a
Yeah.
requirement, but should it be? Absolutely.
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 Yeah. I partnered with a young lady who's a good friend of mine when I was working with the Henry County School System to do a small class to teach kids the basic about stocks.
Right.
And it was something basic, just so they can get started. And I think and it was a small group.
Mhm.
However, that small group walked away knowing some things that they never had heard before,
Right.
never realized was out there for them. So, and I think, as you said, Dr. Edwards, it's about being a great parent advocate in the school system.
Right. Right. And there are some school systems that do a better job of that. Where I work now, I'm not gonna say my school system where I work now.
Mhm.
But because I don't speak on behalf of the school system, that's the only reason why.
Of course.
But I will say that where I work now, they have parent liaisons
Yeah,
in the building. It's a position that they're
yeah,
paid,
yeah.
and their job is to help close that gap because a lot of parents don't know. Now, I will say this, most schools that are Title One, are you all familiar
Mhm.
with Title One at
Yes,
all?
I
D, are you
am.
familiar with Title One?
I'm not.
Long story short, it's federal funding, which we'll see what that looks like, over the next couple of years with
Yes,
the
yeah, right.
federal Department of Education being defunded and dismantled, as they say. But Title One simply is funding that goes to schools where 50% or more of the students are on free or reduced lunch.
I
Okay,
see. Okay.
based on their parents' ability to pay for a full meal for breakfast
Mhm.
and lunch. Because right now, full breakfast, if there's no supplements provided, breakfast is I think $3 or $4
Three,
per.
$3. I think it's 350 or 375, something
Right,
like that.
between 3 and 4 for breakfast, and then lunch is between $4 and $5 a day. That adds up if you have more than one kid. Well, that adds up just having one child.
One
But that
child, yeah.
adds up when you have more than one child. And then I'll say this, a lot of schools don't allow, which is crazy to me, they don't allow children to bring their own
Bring
lunches.
on lunch. Mm-hmm.
So now you're forcing people to pay for their child to eat during the day, and you may not be able to afford it. So anyway, Title One funding helps provide funding to schools where the students are economically disadvantaged, right? And then you have some schools, and it's public information, that are 100% economically disadvantaged. Can
That's
you
right.
imagine a school where 100% of the students live in households where they're economically disadvantaged? And that's real, and that's
Yeah.
every day.
That's
So
every day.
that
Mm-hmm.
being said, Title One schools require for each school to have a parent resource center in the building, right?
Gotcha.
There's a whole room
Mm-hmm.
that is designed for parents to be able to go in, and they can get help
Doing
creating resumes,
resumes. Yeah.
applying for jobs.
Jobs.
That's
Mm-hmm.
the goal of that.
Yeah.
But once again, so hear me out. You have that, but unfortunately, some schools, even though they have the room, they don't have the resources to staff it. Who's reaching out to the parent to let them know that is there? A lot of times the building here, ooh, this is a lot of times that room is open during school hours. But what if you're working in the day?
Yeah.
How does that become advantageous for the parent after
Right.
hours? Well, the parent resources center is closed when the school is closed.
When
Well, you
school's
work all day.
closed.
You know
Mm-hmm.
what I'm trying to say? So sometimes the systems don't connect.
Right.
Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
there's no synergy between the systems. It's just you have to have it. It makes sense, so we're compliant. But oftentimes compliance, there's a thin line, you all, between compliance and being complicit. You all,
Mhm.
and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times you have compliance measures in place, but then you
Mm-hmm.
have systems that are not synergistic, and now you're complicit in disadvantaging, or
Those,
excuse me, now you're complicit in negating the resource that was there for the parent and the child.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right.
Woo.
So we'll move on
That
to
was some good. That was good
AI.
stuff. That was good stuff. That was good
No
stuff.
doubt, no
That was
doubt.
good stuff. That was
That
good
was a
stuff,
that
Dr.
was a
Edwards. That was
word.
good stuff.
That was a
Yeah.
That was
word. That
that
was a
was a
Yeah,
word.
word.
yeah, because I actually can relate to that because, like I said, being in the school system over here, that was I volunteered to. I was the volunteer parent liaison,
Mhm.
and so when I wasn't at basketball or football practice, I would divide my time between being at the practice with my kid
Mhm.
and being over in the library at the resource center.
Mhm.
So, and I had the administrator, she was new there, and going to speak with her at that time and letting her know that there were things that these parents were asking for. Well, we don't have anyone. Do you want to sit in? Do you want to help these parents do this? Do you want to help the parents do that? And being a volunteer, now that I know that they paid for it, I might have to, you know,
Right.
uh, all
It's
right.
the
okay.
resources there. The room is there.
Yeah,
But like I said, sometimes the staffing is not there. And then
yeah,
on top of that, if you're dealing with just someone just volunteering because they can, they might not even be best equipped to help.
right. Yeah, that's true. That's true. All right. Well, D, you were going into AI in education,
Yeah, but
correct?
right quick, I just want to tell all of our viewers, if you've made it this far, we thank you so much. And we want you to go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe so you can get more conversations like these. This is one of the most
Hit the
important
button.
conversations we've had so far, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and I didn't expect it. So thank you for being here, Dr. Ron. Um, my bachelor's degree is in computer science, and I've seen the industry take shape a lot differently um, since AI has been around for a long time. A lot of people don't know that, but since it has come into the spotlight, it has changed a lot of industries, including education. So, from your perspective, what are the biggest opportunities and the biggest lack of opportunities AI presents in your area?
I'll start with the big I'll start with the biggest opportunities, I suppose. AI is here, right? We have to embrace it for its benefits. One thing that I personally how I use AI to work with my teachers individually as a coach is I will simply put in a prompt to say, okay, my teacher is struggling with this particular concept. All right, what are some ways that I can help them? Just as the thought generator to kind of help
Yeah.
speed the process up a little bit. And it will
Mhm.
give me some ideas that I can use to build upon and implement. So we encourage our teachers to use AI to help create robust lesson plans, right? Take your ideas, take your concepts, and use it to build upon it. Vet it out. Don't get me wrong, fact check it, of course, but it can be amazingly powerful to help create lessons that are designed to be differentiated for your different types of learners in the most efficient and quick way possible. Teachers don't have a lot of time, right? If you
Right.
think about a teacher teaching all day long, they may have depending on their schedule, they may have a 45-minute planning period. They
Mhm.
may have an hour and a half. But either way, within one planning period, they have to use the restroom. They may have to grab a snack or eat lunch. They have to meet with other teachers and try to plan and grade papers. Otherwise, all the work shifts where? To after work hours,
After
right?
work
Right.
hours. Yeah.
Right.
And you have a lot of teachers that have multiple jobs because of the pay. Especially if you're starting out as a brand new teacher, you can barely make it, I'll be honest. So now the work that needs to be done shifts to after hours. You don't have a lot of time. So by using AI as a resource to make you more efficient, that's a great way to use that. Um, I will say this from a student perspective, I'm really cautious about AI because
Mhm.
I believe that there needs to be let's call it a digital citizenship class, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
A uh, artificial intelligence responsibility class
Mhm.
that I would say needs to be on every level as well. Maybe not, well, yeah, elementary school for sure, maybe third or fourth grade, because in third or fourth grade, they're really using Chromebooks heavily, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. Hmm.
But it needs to be on every level. The days of saying AI, we're not going to use it is over. We need to teach them how to use it,
Right.
right?
Absolutely.
How to use it
Responsibly.
properly,
Responsibly.
responsibly, to become great innovators, honestly, because it can be. So once again, let's use it to benefit our work, but once again, assume nothing, teach everything, teach them how to use it.
Hmm.
That's for students, that's for the teachers too. Um, I said benefits, right?
Yeah.
The pitfalls we've seen are plagiarism at unprecedented levels. Um, we've seen a lack of authenticity in the work. But I
Hmm.
want to take it one step further. We've seen a lot of students who no longer even take the time to think on their own. As soon as you present a problem to them, the first thing they want to do is go to Chat GPT, use
Hmm.
AI. I mean, don't even take the time to say, maybe I could think about it myself. Maybe I could do it. It's the default, right? I'll
Yeah.
be honest, I don't know how to get around that, because the carrot has been put right there in front of you. It's easy to get to, but we can at least teach you if you're going to get the carrot, let's make fricassee, let's
Yeah.
cook with it.
Yeah.
Let's be creative with it because without the knowledge to use it properly, all we're going to do is find ourselves cycling um,
Yeah.
with students who are no longer even rigorous thinkers anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's one downfall, and that's I think that's going to make the next generation, I won't say lazy, but contemplative about doing anything because it's actually there for them. I think it's a tool that keeps you from thinking, from being motivated, from being challenged. Don't get me wrong. I do use a little bit of AI. I try not to use AI. In my current position at all, because I deal with individuals. I consider myself as a negotiator for the state of Atlanta, so I I can't really use AI in a lot of things that I do, but it makes you not want to actually put forth an effort. Get it in, get it done. But if you could design, you as yourself, Dr. Edwards, you have the opportunity to design the perfect AI tool for educators. What would it look like and what would it do?
Oh, wow. Hmm. Um, if I could design the perfect tool for educators, it would have to be a data. mm, Wait, give me a second. More than likely, I'm thinking it's probably going to be a tool that allows you to input data based
Mhm.
on how well your students are performing. Um, that will then help create plans for intervention and acceleration quickly.
Mhm.
Quickly. Of course, you redact the names, but you simply put in, you have 28 students, put in the data because that takes time to
Mhm.
analyze that data. That does take time. Sometimes teachers don't have it. Now, don't get me wrong, by me saying that, that could put me out of a job, right? As an instructional coach,
Yeah,
because that's one of my
yeah.
Yeah.
responsibilities.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we do need tools to make our everyday work a lot more efficient. If I had one tool, it would be that. So, like I said, be able to input the data that will create intervention plans for students and acceleration plans for students on the drop of a dime without flaw, because
Hmm.
AI has a lot of flaws too.
Yeah, it does. It does. Yeah.
Without flaw, it's
So,
possible.
Dr. Edwards, you don't have to tell us your specific systems plans. Are there talks about how to handle the AI situation? How what's
Yes.
happening in the education system? What can you tell us?
So right now, I'll say this: there are talks, but everything is what do you call it? Everything is a don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, right? In other words,
Mhm.
it's more of a if you use it as a consequence,
Mhm.
it's more punitive. The talks are more punitive about what happens if you use it, as opposed to how to use it the right way.
I see.
There's not enough proactivity in
Hmm.
the conversations widespread across the board. If we're talking about education as an industry, now you do have
Hmm.
pockets of proactivity, you do, or you may have some teachers, of course, who take it upon themselves to talk about it. But as far as it being pushed down from the top from a school system, we there's a lot more work that can be done with that. And
Right.
I'll say this too. We typically navigate what we know about, right?
Hmm.
I mean this in the best way possible. Most superintendents are probably they've worked well to get to that point, right? They put in years
Of
Hmm.
to get to
course.
that point to be a superintendent. So because they put in years to become a superintendent, they may be of a certain age or older. or they
Mhm.
grew
Mhm.
up without it. So there may be a lack of experience and knowledge across the board at the
Yeah.
top of a school system. You know what I'm
Right.
trying to say? And
Right.
so
Right.
that's where outsourcing comes in. That's where you spend your money and your resources appropriately to say, you know what, if I don't know enough about it, let me bring in a third party to consult, educational consulting, who can equip us the right way to make sure that we do this. And I'm not saying that there are superintendents who don't know the work. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
But it is logical to say that the older generation who grew up without it because it's so new is not could be at a disadvantage based on
Mhm.
someone who's growing up with it.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do know that there is no denying the changes that AI are is going to impose upon all industries. It's going to make a lot of people think that college is not
Right.
necessary. It's
Hmm.
going to put a lot of people out of jobs. I read recently that people who do um, what do you call the people who put you to sleep when you take surgery, when you do surgery?
Anesthesiologist.
Anestheticians.
Anesthesiology. That is going to be completely gone supposedly within 5 years because the computer or a machine will be in the room and will do all of that work. And there are other industries like that also. So it's something that needs to be tackled quickly for educators, I think, and it's something that should be in the main topic of discussion
Mhm.
for our coming graduating classes. That's
So
my
we're all,
opinion.
yeah, I know you're absolutely right. We're already behind the curve.
Yeah,
Hmm.
There are schools, there are people who have capitalized on AI. There are schools out there who have a skeleton crew.
yeah,
They may have 4 or 5 people, and they have a school with 500 students
yeah.
Hmm.
because they have a teacher that is AI. And
Hmm.
all they are
Right.
doing is simply monitoring the students as they move forward. That's very highly controversial right now, right? Because
Hmm.
we've already seen virtual teachers who can teach from home as human beings through a computer. But now
Yeah,
the next step in that is remove that human altogether, and you have the software teach the student. Um, we're behind the curve, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. I
And
widespread.
think so.
and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and
It's widespread. Yeah.
and now, and you all know you can probably tell I love to connect one thing to another. Think about
Hmm.
what I just said. Now, if you have these schools, these AI schools who are teaching kids by the masses, right? Now you're going to see schools, public schools,
Both.
brick and mortar buildings start to close,
Both. Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is now then going to have a negative impact
Yeah.
on the economy. You see,
Mhm.
it's all there together.
Yeah.
And so now all of the income and now all the revenue and all the resources are now being funneled down to
Hmm.
the smallest communities, also known as the top 5%.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
So with that in mind, without not cutting D off, I want to ask you something as we get ready to do some closing here. After everything that you've experienced, being a teacher, um, AP instructional coach, what keeps you hopeful, even with AI into play, with the way of economics, political views? What keeps you hopeful about the future of education?
One simple thing, and that people need people.
Hmm.
mm,
I'll be honest with you. Every single time I go to a graduation, and parents and students hug me and they cry, saying thank you for helping my child. That's irreplaceable. There's no amount of AI that can replace that. We may see shifts in systems we talked about before. We may see shifts in systems. It's our responsibility to make adjustments, but we're never going to be able to get away from the fact that we need each other. And as long as we continue to work towards that work, then there will be a safe place for education as we know it. We're going to have to adjust. We're going to have to pivot. We're going to have to evolve every day, for sure. And it may look different than what it looked like before, but by far and large, you can't get away from the fact that we need each other. You can't get away from the fact that we humans need each other. We have to be connected. kids at the end of the day is still a child. They're never going to stop loving on that teacher. They're never going to stop, being fascinated with that teacher who has a colorful sweater on, and they can't stop talking about, their favorite teacher who has a purple, blue, yellow, green, and sweater on. You know what I'm trying to say? Those
Yeah.
things
Absolutely.
are what make
Yeah.
students fall in love with school, not the
Right.
curriculum, not the
Right.
curriculum. They fall in love with their teacher first. Everything
Right.
else comes second to that.
Come second
For
to that.
sure. For sure. So before we go, you also have a production company. So
Mhm.
what can you tell us about that, and what type of projects are you focusing on?
So it's called Ron Edwards Productions. I started Ron Edwards Productions, I do believe, in 2008. I think that's where at least when my LLC was formed, at least with the state of Georgia. Pretty much, it is a company that focuses on stage productions. I don't do any cinematography. It's your traditional old school stage productions, similar to if you go to the Fox Theater and
Yeah.
you see Hairspray or Tyler Perry production. Similar to that, much smaller scale. I did take a hiatus from my production to focus on ascending in my career in my dissertation. But now that I've completed that, I do want to shift and get back to that because I was able to reach a lot of students and keep them in school because of that. I'll say this briefly. My production company at one point, it was in collaboration with a local high school at that time. I had students who would tell me that they hated going to school all day, but they knew they had to come to school to be in the production, you know. And
Cool.
so I hope to be able to connect that work to bring that back and to take that on a larger scale. I retire in 9 years,
Wow.
and I want to be able to focus on being able to teach the power of communication in art from a theater perspective, and I want that to never be a conversation that when someone's talking about that's a dying art, it never has to be a dying art.
Right.
It's only
Right.
it's only an art that sometimes doesn't get enough attention because we don't give it enough attention. But I
Hmm.
believe if you give people a good show, they will always show up and show out. I've never seen an empty Fox Theater. Never.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. My daughter she's a thespian. She does a lot of plays for the Marietta Theater.
Mhm.
She was a theater major at Alabama State University. And she's been a curator for one of the theaters in Decatur as well. So I get it. The stage is a way to be an outlet as well.
Yep. And according to, not to sound like a nerd, but according to, because I love being a nerd, I'll say that.
Hmm.
According to research, whenever there's been a time of recession or depression in the United States, art and theater has been a mechanism of coping and survival to help people navigate life's stresses on every level. So it's not just entertainment, it is what helps humans thrive as human
Hmm.
beings. It
Yes.
keeps us emotionally connected.
Well, we definitely wish you much success with that.
Yes.
And you are
Yes.
fully focused on it, and I'm sure it's going to grow beautifully. Um,
Invite us out to your next
Absolutely.
production.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. I need to think of some content, but once I create that, oh, absolutely, you'll have complimentary tickets guaranteed. And
Excellent.
plus ones. How about that? I'll give you plus one too.
All
Awesome.
right. Sounds
Awesome.
good to me.
So, how can people follow your work and stay connected to you?
Absolutely. Well, I am on Instagram, my professional Instagram. I'm going to tell you what that is. So if you want to follow me, I would love to have as many followers as possible as I share on my journey. Edwards Called to Educate. So it's my last name, Edwards Called to Educate. EDWARDS TOEDUCATE. Edwards Called to Educate. I'm sure it might be somewhere on the screen, maybe. That's my professional Instagram. And then you can also follow me on LinkedIn. Just type in Ronald Edwards and you'll see my 25-year-old face on my profile. Those are my two main forms of professional communication at this point in time.
Okay.
Dr. Edwards, Dr. Ronald Edwards, this has been a pleasure.
It
It
really
was
has.
It's been
surprisingly,
my
it went
pleasure.
very well. Not that I didn't think it would
Surprisingly.
go, but it really has been, perhaps as I can recall, the most important conversation we've had. And we've
Okay.
had some very good conversations. So I thank you for your time and thank you for being here. Dr. Pam, did you have anything else you wanted to say?
I just want to say, Dr. Edwards, keep doing what you're doing. Keep your focus. Keep striving higher. Keep being that mentor for those kids. And I look forward to seeing you doing some great things between now and the 9 years that you retire.
I appreciate that, you all. Thank you so much. This has been quite cathartic for me as well, if I'm being honest. Sometimes you have to pour back into yourself. So this has
Yeah.
been a great benefit to me. D, thank you so much. Dr. P, thank you so much. And I look forward to our next conversation.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to go look up cathartic in the dictionary, and everybody else, if you
Therapeutic.
would,
It's really therapeutic, D Hill. It just really means kind of therapeutic to him
everybody,
to
if
help
you
him
would,
move forward.
please hit the like button on your way out and be sure to subscribe. Thanks again, Dr. Edwards. Everybody, this is Of Two Mindsets, and we appreciate your time. Have a great day.
Have a
Take
great
care.
day,
Thank you so
everyone.
much.
Thank you.
All right.